5:41 a.m., the sky over Crimea suddenly tore open with a white flash that streaked across the sea. The blast sounded like summer thunder, only lower, longer, and so deep it made the ground vibrate. Within seconds, the entire coastal radar belt around Eupatoria went dark. Control screens turned into empty black squares, and the Sevastopol command center sank into shadow. The duty soldiers felt a ringing in their ears and warm earth rise underfoot, not from an explosive, but from a pulse of electricity spreading through the shallow ground, strong enough to deaden every electronic device for tens of miles. From satellite imagery, the peninsula looked like a dark scar on the map. No radio signals, no radar returns, no signs of life. Only wind, smoke, and the red reflections of smoldering metal on the water. As the world brushed the edge of dawn, the Black Sea's electronic order collapsed in silence, and in that very moment, an undeclared operation began under the code name Silent Counterstrike. If Kyiv cannot hold, what happens when silence itself becomes a weapon? Don't look away next. You'll see how a war can be launched without a single bullet fired. As the sun rose above the Black Sea, thick columns of smoke still coiled over southern Crimea. The entire radar and radio network across the region was dead. Ukraine's general staff confirmed this was no malfunction, it was a deliberate electronic strike, marking the beginning of a new phase of the war. US satellites detected more than 40 low-flying signals launched from the Kerch Strait, traveling at nearly 500 miles per hour. They carried no large warheads, only high-intensity electromagnetic pulses that blinded every air defense system within a 20-mile radius. Within 10 minutes, the Eupatoria defense line vanished from the signal map. Patriot batteries in Mykolaiv and HIMARS units near Zaporizhia were forced into manual mode, relying solely on inertial coordinates. From Washington, the Pentagon confirmed two distinct sources of interference, one from Russian UAVs over the Sea of Azov, the other from mobile electronic warfare devices, technology believed to have been supplied by North Korea in September. When every communication channel went silent, Ukraine answered back. 6 HIMARS salvos launched simultaneously, striking 3 supply depots in Jankoi. KH-11 infrared satellite cameras captured each explosion accurate to the meter. No declaration, no warning, only the flash of counterfire replying to the silence that came before it. The world held its breath. The western Crimean sky glowed red, like a burning map. And before the smoke could clear, a new signal appeared, faint, distant, but strong enough to change everything. Don't look away. Because what follows marks the true beginning of the silent counterstrike. 6:05 a.m. From the southwestern skies of Crimea, 3 heat signatures appeared simultaneously on the KH-11 satellite feed. The encrypted data was relayed instantly to Ukraine's command center in Zaporizhia. 3 unidentified aerial objects flying at just 700 feet and nearly 480 miles per hour emitted no identification signals. Their composite frames were coated with radar-absorbent material. The new prototype had a codename whispered only in secure channels, Ghostblade. Their target, the Krimsk 07 Signal Command Post, responsible for controlling over 40% of Crimea's air defense network. Within 70 seconds, the entire peninsula dissolved into electronic chaos. Deep underground, in a bunker 20 miles from the front, Colonel Andriy Melnik gave the order, deploy Delta EW fog layer. Developed under a classified US program, it generated holographic decoys that mirrored real targets. Russian radar screens suddenly filled with dozens of false echoes, blinding their counter-battery systems. While the enemy scrambled to identify what was real, HIMARS launched its second salvo. 6 guided GMLRS rockets tore across the dawn sky, flying low to evade lock-on systems. In just 14 seconds, 3 explosions ripped through Jankoi, 1 fuel depot and 2 auxiliary communication hubs erased from the map. Farther south, 4 Bayraktar TB2 drones lifted off from a temporary base near Kherson, gliding low through the morning haze. Their MAM-L infrared cameras detected 7 armored vehicles moving north, all belonging to Russia's 42nd Mechanized Brigade. The Bayraktars locked on and fired the first laser-guided volley. 8 missiles, 8 impacts, 4 vehicles engulfed in flames, 3 crippled. On the ground, French artillery crews operating. Caesar self-propelled howitzers adjusted their range using UAV telemetry, loading 88-pound high-explosive shells and firing in 30-second intervals. Smoke columns rose nearly 200 meters, drifting as far as the Sevastopol coastline. NATO observers would later call it a perfect opening move, precise, unannounced, and surgically effective, severing enemy communications in under 2 minutes. But new signals from the east soon revealed a twist no one expected. Satellite sensors picked up dozens of small, elliptical objects moving against the wind. They weren't UAVs, they were electronic radar decoys, emitting false frequencies to lure HIMARS fire off target. Within seconds, Ukraine's command screens lit up with hundreds of red dots indistinguishable from real threats. Melnik realized the enemy had adapted fast. He ordered a full change in counterfire protocol, activate silent targeting mode authorization to strike only when triangulated by 3 independent data sources: UAV, ground reconnaissance, and satellite. The command was confirmed at 6:18 a.m. 1 minute later, infrared sensors detected an unusually large heat bloom 10 miles from Jankoy, the exact coordinates of a former Russian forward command post. Melnik didn't hesitate. The third launch order went through. 4 HIMARS rockets soared into the mist, glowing like meteors in a dim sunrise. Each carried a 90-pound warhead, descending precisely into the heat zone. The blast was so powerful that atmospheric sensors in Mykolaiv recorded shockwaves spreading nearly 20 miles outward. When the smoke cleared, KH-11 imagery captured the aftermath. The command post was gone, the earth sunken 5 meters deep, and a half-mile-long burn scar marked the site where it once stood. On the ground, the Ukrainian troops didn't cheer. They simply exchanged silent looks, knowing this was only the beginning of the silent counterstrike. And far to the east, over the Black Sea, 3 new blips appeared on radar, bright, fast, and carrying something heavier than steel. 6:32 a.m. Off the coast of Sevastopol, 3 faint blips appeared on NATO satellite feeds, moving in a tight triangular formation with no identification signals. They were Baby unmanned surface vessels, the suicide drones that had once crippled the Black Sea fleet. This time, they advanced in absolute silence, navigating not by GPS, but by Starlight, a new guidance system co-developed by Ukraine and the United States. When the Babies closed to within 4 nautical miles, the Russian command ship's radar began to distort. The Pantsir defense system opened fire in bursts, but the missiles struck only empty waves. At 6:38 a.m., a single dry explosion cracked through the dawn. The sea erupted, an 80-meter water column shot skyward. A Rapucha-class landing ship had been hit in its ammunition bay, triggering a chain detonation. Blue and red light flickered through the morning fog, reflecting across the Crimean coast. In less than 5 minutes, the waters off Sevastopol turned into a blazing scar of fire. 2 more ships were severely damaged. Coastal radar went offline. US satellite data confirmed at least 3 landing vessels neutralized, and Sevastopol's main command hub completely cut off from communication. In Zaporizhia, Colonel Melnik did not celebrate. Instead, he ordered all transmissions silenced because the next strike was imminent. From the Kropivnitsky base, 4 Magura 5-5 drones took off, skimming the sea surface, pulsing their signals on and off to deceive enemy radar. At 8 nautical miles from shore, they dove toward the naval pier. 3 hit their targets, the 4th slammed directly into an early warning radar post. Sevastopol's entire air defense grid collapsed. The Black Sea glowed like molten steel. The sky shimmered with interference. Russian state broadcasts went dark across the region. and in that darkness, NATO sensors caught a new object moving east to west faster than Mach 5, no radar reflection, flying like nothing ever seen before. No one knew what it was, only that the technological game over the Black Sea had just spun out of control. 6:58 a.m. While the Black Sea still burned in rising smoke, secure lines lit up across Brussels, Washington, London and Warsaw. A NATO emergency session had begun. On the screen, a live map of Crimea flickered with red, each pulse marking another explosion. The Pentagon's briefing came in cold and precise. 3 landing ships destroyed, Sevastopol's radar grid offline, Russia could respond at any moment. The question hung heavy in the air. Should the United States intervene directly? If this action were perceived as NATO involvement, the entire Baltic region could ignite. Paris warned of escalation. Washington stayed silent. In the sterile white light of the briefing room, one voice finally broke through, calm, grim, and final. One wrong decision could cost an ocean of blood. At 7:05 a.m., DEFCON 3 was activated. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group altered course toward the eastern Mediterranean. Over Turkish airspace, 2 Rivet Joint Reconnaissance planes and a Sentinel R-1 began tracking a hypersonic object emerging from the Caucasus, moving faster than Mach 5, its trajectory aimed directly at the Black Sea. Patriot systems in Mykolaiv and Zaporizhzhia switched to full interception mode. Within 70 seconds, the entire regional air defense network turned Scarlet combat ready. Then, a single bright blip streaked across the radar and vanished. No explosion, no smoke, just a faint line on the satellite feed. Maybe it had been intercepted, maybe it had self-destructed. No one could say for certain, but everyone in that room understood one thing. The edge of a world war had just been brushed. In Kyiv, the Ukrainian General Staff issued a short command: do not return fire, maintain silence. It was both restraint and defiance, a declaration that Ukraine would defend itself but not drag the world into chaos. That order, made in a moment of unbearable tension, quietly saved an entire region from unraveling. In Brussels, NATO generals exchanged weary glances. The tension slowly subsided, but relief never came. Because they all knew when peace depends on silence, one sound is all it takes to shatter it. In less than 3 hours, silent counterstrike had paralyzed Crimea's military infrastructure, 3 landing ships destroyed, 1 radar hub knocked out, and the Black Sea Fleet all but silenced. No tanks crossed any borders, no infantry opened fire. Instead, the war was fought with data, algorithms, and silence. Western military analysts called it the largest field test of the data layer warfare doctrine, a battlefield where every signal, every jam, and every speck on a radar screen could substitute for a bullet. Rather than seizing terrain, the objective was to blind, deafen, and then disable the adversary. Ukraine turned a conventional front into a laboratory for a new generation of weapons. Artificial intelligence, UAVs, and electronic warfare fused into a single network. HIMARS, Bayraktar, Caesar, Magura V5, these names were no longer merely platforms. Each became a node in a global mesh linking Ukraine, the United States, and NATO. Every strike was measured to the meter, every target identified before a shot was fired. While the enemy struck at shadows, Ukraine struck the gaps between signals, the intersection where technology met strategy. Yet beneath the veneer of victory lay a chilling paradox. As war digitizes, humans recede from the decision loop. Life and death choices are reduced to milliseconds and algorithmic outputs instead of instinct and deliberation. This is the new threshold the world has crossed. In Washington, the campaign was hailed as a strategic success, but among NATO commanders, the assessment was more sober. Victory won in silence is never complete. When so much depends on technology, a small error or a single mistaken command can turn a defense network into the mirror image of chaos. On the map, Crimea had become a white zone of interference. No artillery noises, no plumes of smoke, only a prolonged hush that everyone understood would not last. In this century, peace is no longer guaranteed by history. It is secured by the ability to react a half-second faster than your adversary. 8:10 a.m. The sky over Crimea slowly cleared, leaving only thin trails of smoke drifting above the sea. On a hill west of Eupatoria, a Ukrainian soldier sat in silence, staring down at the burning wrecks scattered across the water. He said nothing. In his ears, the faint hum of residual static still lingered, the echo of an electromagnetic pulse, the sound of a new era, the age of invisible war. Behind him, his comrades were recovering drones, folding launch racks, and gathering charred battery fragments. No one cheered, no one clapped, because they all understood every explosion that had just torn through the enemy had also erased a little more of their own humanity. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to survive one more day in a world where peace could vanish with a single mistyped command. In Kyiv, the final reports reached the General Staff's desk. The last line read, "No civilian casualties, no border violations, no escalation." For Ukraine, that was victory. But for the rest of the world, silent counterstrike was a warning that global order is not destroyed by artillery or bombs, but by quiet decisions made behind closed doors. Between Washington and Brussels, defense advisors gathered in secret. The same question was asked again and again. If Kyiv falls, what will keep this world standing? No one answered, because the answer already lived within the silence they were trying to preserve. From afar, the faint hum of UAV engines rose again, merging with the sea breeze. They lifted into the pale morning sky, not carrying bombs this time, but antennas listening to the air. A quiet reminder that the war wasn't over. It had merely paused long enough for humanity to remember that strength exists not to destroy, but to prevent chaos. As the sunlight shimmered over the grey water, the narrator's voice closed the story. Peace is never natural. It must be guarded with technology, with courage, and sometimes with silence. Because in today's world, a single moment of weakness can unleash a decade of chaos. If you believe strength exists to prevent war, follow Warscope Silent Counterstrike. History is being rewritten, and we, the witnesses, have a duty not to look away.